Hello and welcome to this episode of Rebuilding Careers. My name is Bonni Pomush, and it is my delight to serve as Working Wardrobe CEO and to host this podcast, which is a very special episode of this podcast because I'm here with my daddy on his 80th birthday weekend, and we thought we would sit down and take a little minute to recap a little bit of the lessons from your career. So thanks for joining me, Dad.
My pleasure. Anything for my daughter.
That's being recorded, you know. Well, Dad, at Working Wardrobes, we have the distinct privilege of working with people from all different walks of life, all different scenarios. And I love to hear about how people started their lives because no matter where we are today, we all had different upbringings, different ways of coming into the world. So will you share with us a little bit about your background? Where'd you grow up? What was it like? Just set the stage a little bit for the world that became part of, Jim Pomush.
Well, I was raised in South Bend, Indiana, which is just south of Michigan, which is to let you know that it was cold country.
Very cold.
Yeah. And then I had 3 siblings. My father was an attorney. My wife, is my mother.
I'm sure Freudian somehow.
My mother was a executive secretary in a liquor company. Both of them seemed to really love their jobs. And then we were raised in a small 2-bedroom house with 4 kids and mom and dad. So mornings and evenings were hectic. I can say now that I now feel bad for my father having to feed us all.
Yeah.
After grade school and high school, I went to school in a small junior college in Nebraska. And after 2 years, went to Wichita State University, which that time I found school was not for me. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps for 4 years, which was an exciting, scary 4 years. And when I got out, I mainly worked at anything I could get, which at that time was as a hod carrier. And then after that, I finally applied to Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, where I was eventually hired and spent about 10 years. And subsequently went lateral to another agency, Mesa Police Department, which I spent another 15 years. I retired in 1995. I knew that I was going to retire earlier than that, but I need to preface this with I retired the same time that my daughter Bonni graduated from high school. And in fact, we celebrated both her birthday and my retirement at the same time.
Yeah, that was quite the celebration. There was a lot to celebrate. Graduation, birthday, retirement. Well, Dad, you have so much career to talk about. So let's start at the beginning, if you don't mind. And how did you earn your first paycheck? I mean, do you even remember the first actual paycheck you got, and where did you actually earn it from?
Well, what I consider my first paycheck was from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Well, actually, before that, in the Marine Corps. And during boot camp, you didn't actually receive your check, it was deposited for you. However, I knew what the amount was.
You've been doing that math?
Yeah. And I was a little disappointed
Yeah.
because I didn't realize at that time that you had to pay for your uniforms.
Oh.
And before you actually got any cash, you had to pay those uniforms off. So the paycheck was very little.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, after about the fourth, fifth paycheck, you finally started seeing some real money.
Yeah.
So that was where my first paycheck came from and what I remember about it.
Yeah. I know you had odd jobs and things like that before the Marine Corps, but that's a pretty fundamental experience to have started your career with, and especially at a time of war. You joined the military when we were in Vietnam, and there was a lot to see and do. I think as you sort of referred to. Any major, I don't know, reflections when you earned that first paycheck and the way with which you were earning it was pretty tough? Any lessons that maybe surprised you about that? I mean, I'm hearing you say, kind of surprised me that I had to pay for all this extra stuff. I mean, most people have the awe, the shock and awe of the taxes and things like that. Any other lessons that you learned from that first paycheck?
Well, I think one of the most important lessons was the experience of having worked in the odd jobs I did as a younger man.
Mm-hmm.
And having worked those jobs, I appreciated the amount of money I was now earning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We
So,
call this gainful employment, where you have steady work, steady pay. There's something predictable about it, and there's something that you can build upon.
yes, and it gave you a base for, I'm trying to think of the word, uh, permanent
Mhm.
permanency. I knew every day or every week I was going to get a check
Yeah.
and I had a job.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't matter whether times were good or bad. You always need law enforcement.
Well, yeah, and I'm wondering too how you bridged that from military to, you mentioned this career in law enforcement with different agencies. Were there things that you learned in the military that you were able to bring into that career?
Oh, many. First one was obeying orders.
That's a big one.
Well, it was. You also learn the discipline.
Mhm.
Uh, you learn how to handle yourself.
Mhm.
And I don't mean just physically, but how to de-escalate and escalate situations.
Mhm.
Um, you learn how to write a report. And
Yeah.
of course, at that time, you had to actually handwrite them.
Yeah.
There wasn't a tape recorder that you could put in and then give the report or the tape to the secretary or whatever. And
Yeah, transcription services were not automated. This is definitely a manual process.
so those were the things that I feel that the military helped me in
Mm-hmm.
having that experience.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing to me too about this sort of bridge that you built between these two careers is how you are still the common denominator. You show up in all of those settings, right? And
Yes.
I'm curious, what were some of the unique skills or talents or, ways of being that you brought to all of those settings that maybe helped you succeed?
I think having played sports uh, during high school and grade school, uh, having worked uh, as a young man, actually, as a kid, uh, I had several jobs. There were a lot of summers between my age of about 8 until I reached high school, where I worked in my father's law office. Uh, I answered the telephone and met his clients when he wasn't there.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, uh, while I was working there, I had a lot of downtime where rather than just sit there and wait for the phone to ring or someone to come in, uh, my father always had magazines in the office for clients to read
Mhm.
while they're waiting to see him.
Mhm.
And a lot of these magazines were detective magazines. And having read them, uh, it kind of excited me.
Uh-huh.
And I loved the way the officers and the detectives and the agencies could put together a crime uh, and the evidence, learn who did it, how they did it, and make an arrest.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. In addition to that, when my dad had clients in his office, of course, I couldn't stay in the office. So I would go to the library, which is only a couple blocks away,
Mhm.
and check out books.
Okay.
And the books were a lot of Lewis Moore,
Okay.
uh, which you learn from those books about people and how trust
Mhm.
and how people are not always what they seem to be.
Mhm.
I think those are the things that really helped me
Mhm.
grow up and come into the world that I did. And when I
Mhm.
talk about the world, I'm talking about the future where
Mhm.
you gainfully employed. Uh, some people like myself end up getting married,
Mhm.
having a child, some have more. So those are the things that I feel were important.
Well, what I love about this is that you were able, you love puzzles, you love games, you love strategy, you love to figure it out. And I love that you discovered that through the magazines in your dad's law office and then sort of fed that curiosity through books. And then here's real life and it's a platter, like a, the charcuterie. It's a huge platter of people and experiences and opportunities to figure people out or solve problems or achieve a strategy. And you've been doing that in all different settings. I can't imagine, though, that in a career in law enforcement, especially, and especially as a detective, where you really honed your craft. I think that we see maybe that is more serious than a game. And I'm not trying to simplify it to a game, but that's basically, it seems, how your brain operates differently in the world, that you are constantly observing and figuring things out and discovering what it is that's going to, I don't know, what you're going to predict. And maybe you're going to be right, maybe you're going to be wrong, but kind of gathering the facts along the way. Have there been barriers for you along that way? That sort of detective mind, did you have things that were presented to you that challenged you in your career, whether it was circumstantial, yourself, things that happened?
When I first went into law enforcement, um, at that time, it was at a period where law enforcement was starting to become uh, more uh, controlled. Uh, where I worked, the agency got involved in a retirement system, which was called public safety retirement. And in that, they also came up with an accreditation program, which forced police departments or law enforcement to have and give their officers training.
Mhm.
And at that time, being very early in that system, my training was done for 6 weeks. Today, that training is 3, 4, 5 months. And of course, you continue to learn because they have classes to keep you updated with the different laws that are passed and the different policies that are passed. The other barriers were in government work, your upper echelon people, the leaders, the commanders, their pay is not based upon the production of work that the people under them or they give you. And therefore, a lot of decisions that are made, and some of them are good, some bad, being that their paycheck isn't based on how much work I do. It's just the salary's there. As long as they're working, they get it, which means that they don't have to treat and make decisions that are negative to the employee. Those are the type of barriers. In addition to that, initially it was very hard to get equipment that was necessary.
Sure.
As time went on, there was more equipment, more availability of learning, which for me, the learning of the work was not hard. For others that were hired on and were just looking for a paycheck, it was difficult. So as time went on, things got better, but it was kind of ironic that there was a Indian community in our area. And after I retired from the Mesa Police Department, I had gained a lot of experience in working major crimes. And what I mean by that is homicides, child molest cases, rapes. And I really had a lot of knowledge and experience in working those types of cases. So again, at that particular time, things were getting a lot better. In this particular Indian community, it was Salt River, Pima, Maricopa Indian community, and they had gained the ability and the accreditation to have a casino. And that casino generated a lot of money. And that started prior to my joining their police force. That money, the tribe community put to use. They started building schools. They started sending their social workers. They started to take their police department seriously. And it soon became that if I needed something as an investigator, I would tell them. And the chief of police at that time, the first couple of years changed a couple of times, and I finally ended up with a chief. His name was Carl Arbach, and Carl really knew how to treat people. He built them up, built us up, and anything that we needed, all we had to do was tell him, and he would go to the consul, and ultimately, for the most part, we would get the tools we needed.
Which is so, I think that's such a, you used the word ironic, but I'm almost feeling like it's cyclical because you were describing some of the barriers earlier on in your career were not having the materials and resources that you needed to do your job well, and that you were talking about, that sort of restriction, whether it was knowledge restriction or, resources. And here at the end of your career, where you had already retired from one department, came to this one, it was in a build up phase, and to be able to have the expertise and wisdom you brought to that time, coupled with, and like you were describing before, someone in a higher management role being able to unlock and get you those resources so that you could deliver the results. I also really heard you talking earlier about this intrinsic motivation that I don't think, you probably are using those words, but I'm wondering where that came from, that you have this drive to do right, or to, maybe it's to figure out the whodunit. Maybe, what is that drive about, Dad? There's something in you that keeps that going, despite whether you had the resources or you didn't. Do you know what that is?
Well, there's a lot of things that drive people, but I think the thing that helped me was having played sports. I didn't like to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in investigation work, I don't want to say I didn't take it serious, but it was like a game.
Right, right.
It was me trying to figure out how to get this individual to tell me, confess, and tell me exactly what they did. And it was a matter of me versus them. And I didn't want to lose.
Yeah.
So, we all have restrictions and rules and policies that we have to follow.
Sure.
So keeping all those things in mind, the investigator's hands are tied a little bit, but sometimes you have to be innovative. You don't have to, as an example, ever since I've been in police work, the Miranda decision has been in effect. That decision made police officers advise people of their rights. Well, I can give people their rights without just reciting them one after the other. So you're still giving them their rights if you talk to them for a minute and tell them, like, you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to talk to me. And then after you talk to them for a little bit and you ask them about their financial situation, etc., you can tell them, that if you can't afford an attorney, we can appoint one for you. So these are the type of things of being innovative that you can use. And then, of course, by the tools, as an example, being able to go back and check an individual that's a suspect in a case, to see what kind of a record they might have, what they've been involved in. That's a great tool, because from those booking sheets, you can find out who it is that bailed them out of jail. You can find out who was with them when they were arrested, things like that. Sometimes you find out little tidbits in this information that really can help you in the investigation. And it's one of the things I've always told newer officers that come in. You have to be willing to do more than just ask a question. There's many times that I went home after investigating a case and thought about it, and thought about how tomorrow I'm going to go back and interview this individual. I set up a game plan. I set up some of the questions that I know I want to ask. And it's like, I'm doing the interrogation prior to the real interrogation.
Well, this takes me right back to what you were describing about sports in high school and you were a football player. So what I'm imagining is those game plays that you're thinking through who's going to go where and what's going to happen next and strategizing. It could go this way, it could go that way. What are the options and being really prepared. I'm curious, Dad, as you look back on an incredibly full career. I mean, you started, as you described, obviously with a college career and then a military career, then a career in law enforcement in multiple agencies. Would you give yourself some advice if you could, like, speak to your younger self? What would be the advice you would give to your younger self on that sort of early on in your employment journey?
Well, communication is one of the most important things in that type of work, law enforcement work. And if I had to do it over, I would have learned more in school. There would have been classes that they had communication classes in high school. I wish I would have taken them. Believe it or not, even in the military, I wish I had taken up some of the finer arts. It's amazing what you learn later that would have been helpful to you.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of going back and being honest with yourself, which I think is a lot of people's downfall. For me, I didn't blame my supervisors or my fellow workers for not promoting, but promotion was not my forte. I loved doing the work. I didn't want to be the pencil pusher, and I didn't want to be the guy telling everybody what to do. It's not that I couldn't do it, but investigation was just the thing that I needed. I needed that sense of accomplishment. I loved the fact that there were people I could help. The most exciting and best case I ever worked was not the homicide. It wasn't the rapes. It was helping a lady who had been married to a Middle Eastern individual, and they became estranged. And eventually he took her child and went to his country. And at that time, trying to get that child back to its mother was almost impossible. But the government agencies, federal government agency that I worked with were really great. And I did the investigation here, gave them the information, and lo and behold, they were able to get this lady's son back to her. And to me, that was the most important thing, because I know how mothers feel. Maybe not all the way that they feel, but when it comes to children, 90% of mothers love their child and would even give up their life for children or for their child.
Yeah. Well, I know you and me get to observe my mom and her love for me, so I could only imagine that that's definitely informed by that close up look at what that is.
Yes.
Dad, I just asked you to give yourself career advice, and I'm curious if you might expand that. You know, we have all different people listening to this podcast, not all of whom are at the beginning, middle, some at the end of their career journeys. So when you are looking back on life, and especially as you turned 80 this weekend, happy birthday again.
Well, thank you. And thank you for letting everybody know.
You're welcome. What life advice, Dad? Any parting wisdom that you are maybe sitting in and maybe in gratitude that you've learned already, or maybe that you wish you learned? Any parting wisdom to all of us?
Be yourself. Don't blame others for your downfalls or for not achieving more. And like I said, be honest with yourself. and do what you are told to do or what your job is without complaining, and do it so that anybody that sees you would want you to work for them. I think that's the crux of all of it.
Yeah.
Money's important, but to go into a career that you love the work, you don't mind putting in the extra hours, the long hours, the being in the cold, being outside and investigating a crime scene, and it's 110 degrees out. Just getting home and being called out at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you get back home maybe at 6, and you get called out again. And these are the things that happen. It doesn't happen that much outside of the investigation part of the job. It's not that patrol officers are the backbone of police work. Don't do those things, but the hours that they work are totally different, and the responsibility is totally different.
Well, that's, I think, the beauty of it, right? That it takes each of us doing what you just advised, which is to be ourselves and to lean into what are the things that light us up, what are the things we love, and to do more of that, whether it's in our career or in retirement.
Yes, and money's not all of it. I would rather take a little less money and love my work than to take more money and not look forward to going to work the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's to doing more of what you love, Daddy, in this new decade. And thank you for joining me for this episode of Rebuilding Careers. Tune in for
I'm not going to let you off so easy, though.
what's next, Dad?
What Bonnie hasn't told you is after I retired from the Indian community, I went to work at a later time where Bonnie worked. I had told her after about a year or 6 months after I retired that, I think I need to go back to work. And she said, Daddy, are you serious? And I said, yes. She said, it's ironic. There's a truancy vacancy in our office or in her school district. She said, I can't hire you, but I can tell you who is taking care of it. So I filled out an application. It went through. I was called in for an interview and I got the job. Well, what ensues is this. She worked in a 2-story building. Lower was mostly lobby and offices. And up on top, second floor, was Bonnie's office and the other administrators. So I knew after a while when I went to work whether Bonnie was in her office or not. The laughter when I went in and the excitement that I was met with when I entered the building, Bonnie was there. When it was down and quiet, I knew Bonnie wasn't there. And of course, I couldn't get over the fact that a lot of times during the day that I was in there, that her fellow workers, not her subordinates, her fellow workers, as she would say, would come up to me and tell me how great they thought she was and how they loved to work for her. Now, that's a side of Bonnie that I'm telling you that you may not see.
That was really fun getting to work together during those years at Kyrene. Thank you, Dad, for your service to the community. You've served the community, as you mentioned, as a truancy officer for a school district, as a sergeant in an undercover narcotics unit for a Native American community right around the corner, as a detective for the city that I was born and raised in. I mean, we're here in the home that you raised me in since I was 2.
Yes.
And of course, it would be remiss if not mentioning, obviously, your service in the military. But my favorite service that you've given is as my daddy.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you.
Love you. Thank you for doing this. This has been another episode of Rebuilding Careers. We're really signing out this time.